Welcome to Unsheltered Conversations, the podcast from HomeAid America, where we explore the stories, challenges, and courage behind the movement to end homelessness. I'm Scott Larson. As we enter Homelessness Awareness Month, we're leaning into this year's theme, Someone You Know. Because the truth is, homelessness isn't just about strangers on the street. It often touches closer than we realize. It's about our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends, and yes, sometimes even our own families. Today, I am honored to have a deeply personal conversation with my good friend Carole Brady, Executive Director of HomeAid Houston. Before leading HomeAid, Carole spent nearly 20 years with Family Promise, walking alongside families experiencing homelessness. But this episode isn't just about her professional journey. Carole is a survivor of domestic violence, and she's also a mother who has walked the heartbreaking road of having a son who's battled addiction and lived often on the streets. It's a story that's courageous, maybe raw, and painfully real, but one that is filled with love, resilience, and hope. Carole, thank you for joining me today and your willingness to share your story.
Absolutely, Scott. Glad to be here.
So, Carole, as we dive into this, you've devoted your career to serving families through Family Promise and now through your work with HomeAid Houston. But before that, you yourself were a survivor of domestic violence and a story you didn't tell for many, many years. What gave you the courage to begin to share your story with others?
So, this is a really tight knit community, and I was a newcomer, and I had been working with the majority of people in our community, either fundraising or through the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if I thought that if I had told them, would they see me as broken versus somebody, who was impassioned and professional. Um, would that judgment happen? And so when I went to work for HomeAid, a friend of mine who ran the domestic abuse shelter, who knew only that I had experienced it, it was her last luncheon and her last time to find a speaker. And she really asked me if I could just step out in faith. And I thought, okay, let's do this. And probably one of the scariest things I'd ever done, for sure, was to share my story with the community. Um, but the response was beautiful. There was a lot of tears in the audience and a lot of people who didn't know that about my life. Um, so it wasn't judgment. It came out as really love and also a knowledge that I had people I really knew that I didn't know that they were going through things as well.
So not only you stepped out in faith to share your story, but it touched people in ways you probably never would have expected. How how did sharing your story or just your story itself shape the empathy and perspective that you bring to your work today?
I think that there is a certain amount of knowledge when you're sitting down, whether it's with a homeless family or with a colleague, and knowing that there is a shared piece of each other, because you really do understand the pain. I mean, you know what it feels like to be degraded. You know what it feels like to be hit. You know what it feels like to make excuses and to go back over and over again. The humiliation that can bring to a person to keep returning to that kind of a situation, not understanding that you are worth it to walk away. Um,
Mm,
and when my families would come in and they were humiliated that they were homeless, they were embarrassed that they didn't know what to do. They didn't know they didn't know how to bring themselves to a point of asking for help. But so by the time they found me, they were really at the bottom. And I really knew what that felt like. Unbelievably knew what that felt like. And that's not a good
yeah.
place to be. Yeah.
As you think back on that season, which was many years ago, uh, what what gave you that strength to move forward, to not go back or to say, I am worthy? What was there something or someone that gave you the strength to move forward?
The night before I left for good, I experienced one of the worst physical abuses and really felt like I might not make it.
Mm.
And I remember in that conversation to myself, turning to God and just saying, "If you will let me live this time, I will spend my life serving others," which I did. So, yeah, He allowed me to live, and um, I healed, and I was the lucky one. This is God is the one who got me out of it, and He is the reason I have served everybody.
'Cause you're right, there are others that don't make it, and
So many.
but you were at that point of not knowing if you were gonna make it. That is profound and deep, and look at the impact that's happened from that. Um, wow, you know, one of the other most personal and difficult parts of your story as your journey went on was a mother, and you've been open with me and others about, one of your sons struggles with addiction, mental health, and at times, periods of off and on experiencing homelessness. Can you share, what that's been like for you? And we're gonna delve into some other things, but what has that been like for you?
So when I got home and I started getting better, I had 2 little boys, and I was, a grand age of 25 years old, and, had already lived about 3 lifetimes. But I had 2 boys who were about 2.5 years apart. One who was, kind of feisty, my oldest son, and my youngest son, Casey, was absolutely just a sweetheart, just a teddy bear. When he started school, it was Eddie Bauer button-down shirts, and
Hmm,
yeah, he was just a little nerd you couldn't not love, right? And he was really brilliant, smart. Did not get that from me, by the way. Let's be very fair. Um, so about the time he was in 6th grade, and his brother would have been in 8th. Um, his brother's at the table trying to do calculus or something and was really having a difficult time, and Casey went over and sat down and said, "Oh, well, let me show you," and showed his older brother how to do it. Now, Casey hadn't taken courses in that. How he knew how to do it, no one knows. We really just believed he was just a really brilliant, gifted kiddo, and 3 years later, um, he was storming out the door as an angry teenager, getting
hmm.
high, not going to class. I would drive him to school. I would walk him to the front door. I'd get in my car and leave, and he would walk right out the back door. I mean, it was just this entire, no matter what you did. And we were dumbfounded, literally had no idea what, I mean, what do you do? He's exceedingly smart and he's kind unless he's high. And then he is a person under what we called foreign management.
Hmm,
Oh,
interesting.
and it was tough. And here I am in Loveland, Colorado, running a homeless shelter and my own child. My friends would say, "I saw Casey sleeping in the park last night." I mean, it was devastating beyond.
The Yeah, the emotions, that you had to wrestle with walking with him must have been immense and widespread. What were some of those emotions? What did you fear, anger? What just dumbfoundedness?
I was angry. I was angry. I was angry that I was feeling like a failure again, that of all the people in the world, I couldn't convince that he was worthy of love, that he was self-destructing. Um, and I know what that feels like when you have no self-esteem and you just continue down that road because you truly don't feel like you're worthy of redemption. And if you're an oddball, the one group that will always welcome you are other oddballs who are getting high.
Mm,
Like that
yep.
that club has no, like, you absolutely can join that club. They're going to look past all your weirdness and say, come join us. As long as you're high, you belong with us, kind of thing. Right.
Everybody's welcome. Yeah.
Everybody is welcome. And it was incredibly hard. I would get calls saying, your son just stole something very random from our local Safeway. Something that I knew he didn't need, but for whatever reason, he did it. And every time he'd get caught, and the police would call and they'd say, well, we've picked him up. He's going in front of Judge so and so. And I know these people. So I did landlord tenant law, I did stopping evictions. So these are all people in my community that know me and I
Yep.
know them, and they trust when I say something. And I, several times, went to several judges and said, please put him away for a little bit. Let him get sober, please. You'll be doing him a favor. And yet, Casey will walk in, very astute, dressed well, very, very eloquent speaker. I mean, so kind, so nice, blue eyes, tall, good looking kid. And they would say, oh,
Quite the charmer.
really turned yeah, he was a good con. He was a really good con. And, they said, "Yeah, yeah, we're gonna let him go. We believe in him." So, yeah, it
Wow.
was rough. It was really tough, and I was mad. Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine. And just those lessons when you're seeing in your son the things you're learning about humanity in
Yes.
general, and then how do you have compassion that no training that or in a career or a class, I mean, you are living it in that the aspect of, wow, humanity is playing out right before me and my son, the whole spectrum. And I'm sure that was difficult. You were learning as it was unfolding before you.
And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to have to be that far behind the cues that help you help someone. You're like, "How can I not?" Like, my compassion and my love for him, I mean, he was my baby boy, of course, and I knew the side of him that was precious and dear to me, and to now see this young man, 6'1" at the time, maybe 115 pounds
Mm,
because of his drug abuse,
yeah.
and no matter what we did, and we chose not to ever bail him out whenever he was arrested. We learned later about not enabling, how much that says, I love you. Although everybody also judged that when you said, no, I will not hire him an attorney. No, I won't bail him out. People really thought I was a horrible, horrible mother.
Well, that's really, I mean, you had to struggle with that balance between loving him deeply and setting boundaries when needed. And you had to set some boundaries. If not, yeah, there might have been other circumstances for you and your family that would unfold. How how did you grapple with that? I'm sure it was difficult to find that balance.
It was, and we also had another child who was in high school and struggling with all the normal stuff that a high school student struggles with, girlfriends and cars and, part-time jobs and, all the things that are normal. And on the other hand, the other one is going away to a juvenile youth facility for 6 months. And, um, are we gonna go visit him? When I go visit with him, he tells me what a terrible person I am.
Mm.
Wasn't
He
there.
says that to you directly.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So several times. Yeah. And it's hard to hear. I mean, as any mom will tell you, it is very hard to hear. And it is, even harder to keep uh, that straight. Your composure was raised. Like, you don't show those emotions, and yet you're trying to love on this kiddo, but know he's in trouble and you won't accept any help, and you are the bad person. And at some point, my husband and even my older son, um, thought I was a bad person as well. They were like, you're mean." And so it was like,
That is, you were getting it,
mutual.
you were getting it from all sides. Yeah.
And my mom, I mean, everybody was just like, "Oh, Carol." And I'm like, "No, no, no, you don't understand. You have to love him enough to not." help him destroy his own life. I know it sounds really odd, but that was what I was getting as the message was you can't, if you give in, you're basically saying, I accept this behavior and without any correction, it's fine that you're an addict. And it wasn't. I was fighting for his life, even if nobody
Yeah.
else wanted to. I did. So,
So then the years rolled by. I mean, that
mhm,
was in early days. Tell
yeah.
us about a little bit more about that journey, that he was on, and what would you want people to know about your son and the reality of the journey that he went on, and where is he at today?
So it was kind of on and off. He would get, first of all, we sent him to many very, very expensive detox centers and sobriety living centers. And we used to call him the 12-day kid because he could come home after 90 days of sobriety and really great therapeutic lessons. And within 12 days, he will have cut the ankle monitor, stolen everything out of my purse, grabbed something to pawn, and out the door he went within 12 days.
Within 12
Oh,
days.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we called him the 12-day kid because that was the longest he ever stayed sober from the time he was 13 till his 20s. Um, in and out of local jails, county jails. Then, because of all the times he kept cutting off his ankle monitor, not paying his fines, not going and doing what they told him to do for probation, he eventually wound up in prison. Um, the tough, the tough stuff, and he hardened, but he got sober for a while, and the letters that he sent were lovely and educational, and he was finally starting to get it, um, apologetic, loving, and I would always have hope every time, and he would get out, and within 12 days, he's using again, and
Mm.
go back to jail, and I remember telling him at one point, God's out here too. He doesn't just live in jail because it seemed like when he'd go to jail, he'd
He
find
would
his
find God.
yeah, he'd find his way back to the Lord and tell me this. And I said, he doesn't just live in prison. He literally is right here if you would just figure it out. And this went on and on for a lot of years. And I would always be available to listen. I called in favors to put him in halfway houses when he got out of prison. He would burn those bridges for me. By then, we had moved to Philadelphia, and I was running a family promise out there. And he honestly, um, he wanted help, and you could tell, but he at this point, he couldn't stay sober. His body would not allow it, and in the meantime, it was, he was shot, he was overdosed several times. It was hard to hear some of these stories of what happened, um, to him, and, um I had to say to him, "Listen, I'm never gonna change my phone number, but you need to not call me until you have many years of sobriety, because this roller coaster doesn't work for me. I'm trying to care for his granny, my mom, as she's in her last stages of life, and I just couldn't keep it up, and it was too much emotionally. It was too much for me." Um,
Did
and
he honor that request?
he did. He hung up the phone, and I didn't hear from him for years, years.
Wow.
And, 2 years ago, it was the week before Thanksgiving. I remember because I was dropping off a package to one of our builders as a thank you, for something they had just done for HomeAid. And I'm sitting in the parking lot answering a few email things, before I head home, and I get this message, and it said, "Hi, mama. Do you have a minute to speak with me? I'm sober, and I'd like to hear your voice."
Oh,
Yeah.
I I can't imagine. I wanna hear your voice.
So, I mean, it took me all of 10 seconds to call him back,
Yeah, I bet.
and we spent, about 3 hours just in that parking lot crying and talking and laughing a little bit. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to tell anybody, because, I mean, wow. Uh,
It's like, did this really happen?
right, and do I
And would
trust
anyone believe? Yeah.
yeah, and will it stick? Like, you kinda hate to put your heart out there again, um, only to know that what if he goes back to it? It's like, I don't know if I could handle that again as a mom. I don't know. I don't know. So, anyway, yeah. So, yeah,
Well,
um,
and it had been many years. What was it that caused it to stick this time for him to be sober?
so he had an overdose, on fentanyl, something that was laced with fentanyl. That wasn't his drug of choice, but his drug of choice was, um, laced with it, and
Okay.
he was yeah, he was with somebody who literally saved his life, another homeless young lady, and for that, I owe her all the gratitude in the world. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, um she went door to door, in this I'm sure they were, like, in a really beautiful part of town of Colorado. I mean, I'm guessing not, but because they were in some hallway getting high, but she knocked on every door till somebody called an ambulance. Um, Casey woke up. He had had a traumatic brain injury from lack of oxygen, obviously, and, he was in there for a long time, and uh, they addressed the fact that he had bullet wounds still in his knees from a long time ago. He had lost
Oh,
a
wow.
finger. I never want to hear that story again. Don't care about it.
Yeah.
Um, but he got well, and he said, "I will never live like this again." Um, and he hasn't. And he's now found his faith, um, and his life again. And he's a completely different person. He's got a great sense of humor, which I cherish, and yes, that is from me. Um,
Yes. For those of us that know Carol, absolutely that's from you.
yeah, he's very funny, and, um, he calls, texts, or sends me a Bible verse every single day. Uh,
Every day.
every day.
Oh,
I wake up every morning, and within an hour, I get, "Good morning, mama. How are you today?" And he is so grateful for every breath, for every day. And it is to me, it's a miracle. What I could not do for him, God did. Apparently, it took him almost dying to find his way back to the world. So we have
like
that in
you.
common. Yeah.
Yes.
But in the meantime, and it's funny, I texted him and told him I was going to do this. I said, "Are you cool with that?" And he said, "Mom, actually, I think of this as our testimony." He said, "You were taking care of the people who truly needed your love and your time and your kindness." And he said, "You showed families the compassion that they needed to have at that moment in their life." I told him about a mom that was in my program whose daughter was struggling. And the mom didn't realize her daughter was high, and I did. I mean,
Mm,
so these are the lessons that you learn as a mother of an addict, is that
yep.
you can help another person find their way to getting on that road a lot sooner than I got. Um, so Casey gave me a huge gift by doing that. He really, really did, and I am so grateful for him for doing
So
that.
your lives are intertwined.
They
I
are.
mean, obviously mother son,
Yeah.
but your lived experience together, yours before he was born, and then now even to this day. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you have this texting every day. I would hope that anyone that's listening to this in the future find that person that you can text every day when you wake up in the morning. Just say good morning because we need that connection and just find that person like you have with Casey. That's just beautiful.
Thank you. I kind of think that's what is lacking in a lot of the families that we serve. Um, Homelessness isn't just about not having a place to lay your head. A lot of it was they just didn't have a human contact. They didn't have somebody who truly was grateful that they were alive that morning. And
Yep.
that's the part that I think people miss about homelessness is that that's somebody's son or daughter or sister or mom. You don't know. So I think it's
Yeah,
important.
we've talked about that a little bit before in other contexts. You know, Kevin Adler, uh, I don't know if he coined the term, but it's relational poverty. You know, there's all kinds
Yes,
of poverty, but the basis of a lot of this ties back to relational poverty.
truly. It does. It
Mm.
does. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
You know, I want to come back as we close in a bit to Casey, but a little bit ago you talked about the struggle from criticism and judgment from yeah your family, etc., and even your professional world.
Mhm.
How did that criticism affect you professionally and personally? Personally as a mother, professionally as an advocate, that criticism from colleagues and peers.
You know, that to me was, a harsher pill to swallow when I was hearing it from who I actually people I admired or, looked to as a mentor, and then to hear them espout, well, there was something wrong with the family then, if that's how their kid turned out. Clearly, mom was never home, or, oh, well, she was a single mom for 8 years. So, of course, this is what you would expect. That was
The judgment.
the
Yeah.
judgment. And it was, you know, I even had a one time very close friend say to me, well, if you had just put up with the abuse, he would have grown up with a father.
Oh, geez.
And I said, well, yeah, that's possible, I
I chose
suppose.
not to. Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been around, so I don't think that that would have worked out. Um, and so so it was hard, and even to this day, I was actually at a meeting the other day, and we were talking about homelessness in the town that I live outside of right now, which is, they are seeing an insurgence of homelessness on the street corners and, people at the parks overnight. And a lot of that is because new laws have gone into effect regarding
Yep.
the homeless sleeping on the streets.
Correct.
And this gal who I had considered quite the person said, "We never had that before. We've never had homeless in Kingwood." I said, "Gosh, I've been taking care of the families in Kingwood that have been homeless for over 11 years. So I'm going to go, I don't think you know what you're talking about." So, yeah. But when they find out that about me, that I had a kiddo in addiction, yeah, there was a lot of judgment. Yeah.
So how would you what do you want people to know about that? About how addiction and homelessness don't just impact that individual, but impact the entire family system? What do you want someone to know?
So, first of all, I think that addiction, whether it is something genetic within your family, and in this case, it was my ex husband, my first ex husband. Had I didn't realize that he was addicted to drugs, and so
Mm.
that is a carrying factor for sure. But people use drugs and alcohol as a way to mask mental health issues, as a way to self heal a little bit. It helps you be able to deal with the day. It's not that anybody wants to live in addiction, but it does lead to homelessness in a lot of ways. You lose your job over it. It can be something as simple as, oversleeping too many times. There are functioning addicts, um, who work every day, and then there
Yep.
are those who are homeless, and it is very difficult for them, um, to get back on their feet if somebody doesn't step in. That I think is the thing people have to understand. Stop concentrating on the addictive part, concentrate more on the compassion. What is it that they are self-medicating? Is it a mental
Correct.
health,
Yep.
right? Is it a mental health? Is it traumatic? Is it a traumatic therapy that they need? Is it, we don't know what somebody's gone through. I think it's start with kindness, start with curiosity, ask, what can we do for you? What are you in need of? And it's not just a bed. It's
No.
someone has
No.
to walk it with them. And that's, to me, I think that that was the gift that Casey gave me, was the ability to be humbled and um, curious about all the aspects of how you can help. Um, Both domestic abuse wise, I learned that. And then the addiction, Casey gave me that as a gift. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was blessed.
So they're not all C's, but kindness, curiosity,
Yeah.
and then compassion,
Yes.
um, are all woven together.
Yeah.
If Casey was on this call with us right now on this podcast, what would he want people to know about what it's like for him to live with these challenges and to feel judged or misunderstood? What would he share?
I think he would tell you that the not enabling was probably the thing that saved him. And he's told me that. He said, Mom, the fact that you would not do for me what I should be doing for myself really formed the mindset of I am responsible for me. So, how do I take care of me? What is it I need? And he said, because you couldn't do it for me. And he said, that was a big part of it. He said, the fact that you stopped enabling me, I knew then it really was going to be up to me to beat this. He is so grateful every day and he lives very simply. And I'm just getting to know him again. I'm just getting to know him again. And while he is covered in tattoos, some from prison, some from his own friends who are some really great artists, he turned every one of the tattoos that glorified drugs into reminders of what led to that life and that what he never wants to be again. Um, I think he would say, be loving, um, but be strong. Be strong with somebody that is going through this. Your job is not to save them. Your job is to love them while they save themselves.
Hmm, that's beautiful. Um, with your professional path, we've talked about you were 20 years at Family Promise, serving families, and now you're leading very effectively HomeAid Houston the last 6 years or so. Um, those years prepared you for where you're at right now. Are there projects that HomeAid Houston is doing now or that you've done that really has been meaningful to you or resonated because of your personal story?
Yeah, yes, I do, yes. I think all of them do a little bit because there's a little bit we don't really ever know the full story of somebody's life, right?
Yep,
Um,
we don't.
but the minute I started meeting with New Danville and talking with adults with intellectual delays and defects, um, I realized my own cousin, who is the sweetest person I know, had IDD. They didn't call it that then. Um, that touched me so much, and I wanted to build for them because I thought this would be a beautiful tribute to somebody who, as a cousin who lived up the street, was so kind and just a beautiful human being. Or um, Mission Yahweh with their homelessness for moms and kids because, there by the grace of God go I. I mean, I was this close
Yes.
to
Yep.
homelessness, like this close, just barely being able to put food in front of my kids, not and working 3 jobs. It was tough. And so, yeah, every time we do something as a food drive to feed people who I was a recipient sometimes back in the day, um, of those food baskets, and it meant everything. So, yeah, I mean, everybody that we have built for, there's some aspect of it that resonates with me, um, for sure. And please don't ever mistake that somebody is raised in a great family. And I come from a very close knit, really very, very successful family. Um, that doesn't mean bad things don't happen. Bad
No.
things happen to everybody you know. It doesn't matter where you come from. Um, these things can happen. And even my mom, Miss Nancy, at one point said, I never told anybody about Casey's addiction. I never told them about you being beaten. I was too embarrassed. She said, then one day I'm at coffee with some of my friends and they started talking about their children and their grandchildren going through very similar things. And she said, I finally realized it's not about how you grew up. This is about life, and
Yep.
how you react and how you conquer it is entirely up to you.
So these experiences really have influenced how you lead HomeAid's work and live your life. This as we step into Homelessness Awareness Month, the theme of someone that's all about the theme of someone you know.
Mhm.
Why do you think it's important for people to really realize, like we were talking about, that this isn't a distant issue? It is something that can happen to every family. How do we personalize that for people? How do we allow them to be reflective? You have any thoughts about that?
I think if you can, in some way, instead of looking at how somebody became homeless, because how is not as important as the how can we serve you? How can we make this better now? It is a foot forward towards somebody, through compassionate speech. Don't ever assume you know what happened to get them there, and it doesn't matter what happens. What matters is how you embrace them now and make things better for their situation so they can take care of themselves again.
Yeah,
It's being compassionate, but also loving each other.
yeah, absolutely. And as we look to kind of close our conversation today, what gives you hope? Hope in your son's story, in your family, in the mission of HomeAid. Where do you find hope today?
Honestly, Scott, with every sunrise, I have hope.
Yes.
Every sunrise, we wake up and we are blessed to be alive. And I have hope every day that people will find some kindness and some compassion for each other and aren't afraid to show it. I think that's the other part. Stop trying to be perfect. Just step out in faith a little bit.
Well, Carol, thank you. If we were together in a room, I'd give you the big virtual hug.
I'd
Um,
hug you right back, my friend.
uh, Thank you for your courage to tell your story. Not just as a leader, but as a survivor, as a mother. You telling Casey's story, being a human being who's faced pain head on and has turned it into not only purpose but hope. For everyone that's been listening, I let Carol's story remind you that homelessness is not about them; it's about us. It's about someone that you know. This Homelessness Awareness Month, I encourage you to open up your eyes and your heart to see the dignity in every person, to support those that are struggling, and to remember that compassion and kindness starts at home. This has been Unsheltered Conversations. I'm Scott Larson. Thank you for joining us and helping us build not just housing, but hope.